All right, meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to China is calling on Beijing to use its close relationship with Iran to help rein in Hamas ahead of expected talks between China's special envoy for the Middle East and Israeli officials happening today. This after Beijing's special envoy told an Egyptian official earlier this week that Beijing is ready to coordinate with the nation to promote an immediate ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, while also calling for humanitarian support for the Palestinians. Joining me right now is Atlas Organization founder and author of The Decisive Decade, Jonathan D.T. And Jonathan, you have been so good and studied on China that I want to begin here in terms of its support for Iran, because we know that Iran supports Hamas, but China apparently supports Iran. What can you tell us about this?
Well, right, Maria. And look, the big picture here, I think, is, three of the major regions in the world that are most important for U.S. national security: Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Now, two of those regions are at war. So we are in a much more dangerous world than we've been in a very long time. And as you've pointed out, I mean, even though China tries to play neutrality and do that in a diplomatic way, as they did after Putin's invasion of Ukraine, there were many that turned to China thinking they would be peacemakers when, in fact, they were backing Putin all along. Here we have Hamas as a proxy, essentially, of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And then China's support for Iran is actually quite deep as well. So in 2020, they signed a 25-year memorandum, essentially, of strategic cooperation, where they pledged about $400 billion, according to the New York Times, over a 25-year period, for investment directly into the energy sector, into the telecommunications sector, into other things like that. They are Iran's largest trading partner. And of course, you're starting to have this axis form, not only between Russia and China, but between Iran and Russia and China. They have joint naval exercises now on an annual basis, which they call what is it? It's the Belt of Security or something in the Indian Ocean. So they're even sort of using some of the language of the Belt and Road. But the three navies, Russia, China, and Iran, have been exercising since 2019, and it's now an annual thing. And in the meantime, Iran is supplying Russia with weapons for its war in Ukraine. And those two countries, Russia and Iran, have become much, much closer since the outbreak of civil war in Syria, where those two are backing Bashar Assad. So this axis of authoritarian states just continues to cohere.
Yeah.
And even though Beijing goes and pretends to play peacemaker here and there, the U.S. has major important allies that are under threat, and Israel is just a very, very significant U.S. ally. So when we go and say that we're going to back Israel, I mean, you can see how different our approach to world affairs really is, to have genuine friends and partners who we will support.
Yeah.
And in this case, our support for Israel is a very different approach to the Middle East than China,
and these are three nuclear powers, we should point out, three nuclear powers that you're talking about in this axis. The Washington Times out with a piece this morning, focus on Israel-Gaza war, raising fears of China attack on Taiwan. The author writes this: the emergence of a second conflict outside of the Asia-Pacific region is fueling more concerns that China will exploit the distraction of the West to launch an anticipated military operation against Taiwan. Jonathan, I mean, if you're Xi Jinping today and you see what's happening in Ukraine as a result of Russia's aggression, now what's happening in Israel as a result of Hamas and Iran's aggression, I mean, you probably want to go in sooner than later if you're planning to go into Taiwan. How do you see this?
Well, look, I mean, on one hand, Chinese strategy, I think, is very structured, deliberate, it's long-term, it's studied and sort of planned out. On the other hand, it's also opportunistic. So, I think it depends on what happens in the Middle East here. For example, I mean, if Hezbollah does ultimately enter this war and it becomes a two-front war, that is a very different and much more destabilizing situation than where we are today. So again, we've entered into a much more dangerous situation. And that's why U.S. deterrence is going to be so important here to prevent this war from expanding. And that's the key next question. Does this remain sort of Israel taking action against Hamas as is necessary and as we will support? Or does this become sort of expanded war if other proxies of Iran, or if Iran itself or any of that starts to widen the conflict in the Middle East? At that point, I think the question of what happens in Asia becomes a much more urgent and pressing question. But let's not forget, I mean, Beijing is still preparing, still building a military that's meant for those sorts of operations. And it's not just Taiwan. I mean, there are other flashpoints in Asia. I mean, we've seen recently in the South China Sea on Second Thomas Shoal, the sort of back and forth between China and the Philippines, where the Chinese have been erecting physical barriers to prevent Philippine resupply of one of their outposts in the South China Sea. So there are other flashpoints too. But certainly there are preparations for Taiwan. I mean, they've made it very clear to the world that they intend ultimately to do that, that the reunification will never be stopped. I mean, that nothing can get in their way. So again, to have them backing Putin, backing Iran, and to see these other conflicts taking place around the world, we're entering into very dangerous times.
Yeah, no, I guess my question is, did the plan become expedited as a result of this war on Israel?
I don't think there's any evidence for that yet. But if they're willing to take advantage of a more dangerous situation as it unfolds, I think that is often how they've operated in history.
Well, China announced it will host its third Belt and Road Forum next week. Russian President Putin is expected to attend this two-day event. It starts next Tuesday, Jonathan. What do you expect here? Right.
So, for Putin to obviously go to China, I mean, he's not worried about the International Criminal Court when he goes to Beijing. And, this appears to be a very large summit. I mean, there are about 150 signatories to various Belt and Road memoranda around the world. So you're talking about many, many nations, a whole lot of Africa, a whole lot of Eastern Europe, a whole lot of Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of Latin America that have signed up to this initiative. So, we'll see who shows up. And I think then the next question is, to what extent do third-party nations in emerging regions start to see themselves as participating in an anti-Western initiative by the time you have Putin and Xi Jinping summiting around this I think what many of them thought was a development initiative. I mean, the Belt and Road is $1 trillion, largely into emerging markets. But the more that it becomes a political forum and an anti-Western forum showcasing Putin and Xi, and we all understand what they're up to, I think there is ultimately the possibility that other nations start to look at it differently, and that's where we need to go. I mean, we need countries to start dropping out of the Belt and Road and getting into the U.S. alternatives, and we're going to need to, have much more robust alternatives in the emerging world to Beijing's financing.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that you've got some genuine U.S. adversaries taking place in this particular forum, I mean, it's changing the nature of what it was supposed to be for a lot of third-party nations.
And I spoke with former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo this week on this program about China and its support for Iran. Watch this.
Think for a moment that Iran doesn't work alongside the Chinese Communist Party. You'll remember it's now been a year and a half or 2 years, signed a 25-year weapons deal between China and Iran. No, they are firm partners, this axis, right? I'll give you another example from just recently. The UN Security Council, China and Russia, blocked any response, any just simple statement about the grotesque terror attack inside of Israel. No, the Chinese and the Russians see this as a chance to distract the West, to undermine what we had begun to build out in the Middle East, relationships between the United States and the Gulf Arab states. The administration has played fast and loose with American money to the harm of the American economy with the Chinese Communist Party.
Jonathan, your thoughts?
Well, I think what Mike Pompeo was just driving at with regard to American money going fast and loose to the Communist Party. I mean, again, the backdrop here is China, as a $20 trillion economy, is able to be the backer of major states like Iran and Russia. I mean, these are major adversary states, and China can back them as a trading partner, as a financier, and as a diplomatic supporter of their own regional initiatives.
Wow.
So we really do have to get moving on economic containment of China. I mean, this is an adversary of America. It is supporting, our adversaries of our allies in other parts of the world. And it's time for us to just have a really serious approach to Beijing. And we're not there yet. I mean, we're making some progress, but we really need to move faster.
Yeah, no, we're not there.
It's a global thing.
Right.
It's not just Asia.
Jonathan, thank you. We'll keep watching. Jonathan D.T. Ward joining us this morning.